August 24, 79 AD. The Bay of Naples shimmers under a deceptively peaceful morning sun. But look closer. A plume of smoke, thin and impossibly tall, rises from the sleeping giant, Mount Vesuvius. The people of Pompeii see it, shrug, and continue their bustling day in the forum. They have no word for volcano. No memory of an eruption. For them, the mountain is just a silent, green guardian. But deep beneath their feet, pressure is building. The earth is holding its breath. And in a town called Herculaneum, a wealthy merchant named Felix is already noticing his prized fountain has run dry, the water vanishing into the ground. The gods are stirring. And they are not pleased. This isn't a story about a city that died. It's about the final, terrifying hours of the people who called it home. And for most of them, the nightmare is only just beginning. A few miles away, in the bustling port of Misenum, Admiral Pliny the Elder is on his ship, the flagship of the Roman fleet. He's a man of science, a writer, a commander. His nephew, Pliny the Younger, watches the strange cloud from the villa's terrace. It looks like an umbrella pine tree, he'll later write, a tree with a long trunk and branches spreading out at the top. But this is no ordinary tree. It's growing. Darkening. The admiral, ever curious, orders a small vessel to investigate. But the sea is turning strange. The water is receding, pulling back from the shore as if the sea itself is trying to escape. Fish flop helplessly on the exposed sand. The air grows warm, then heavy, then burns the lungs with a smell of sulfur. This is no natural phenomenon. This is the earth tearing itself apart. And the admiral realizes, with a jolt of horror, that he is not just a witness. He is about to become a rescuer, or a victim. Back in Pompeii, the rhythm of daily life is a deafening orchestra. The clang of blacksmiths, the chatter of the market, the rumble of carts on volcanic stone. Julia, a young baker's daughter, is kneading dough in the back of her father's shop, her arms dusted with flour. She hears a low growl, deeper than any cart. The ground shudders, and a clay cup on the counter rattles itself off the edge, shattering on the floor. The tremors have been getting worse for weeks, but this one feels different. It feels personal. Through the window, she sees the sky turn a sickly yellow, and a fine, gray dust begins to fall like snow, but it burns when it touches the skin. The air is filled with a sound like 1,000 wild animals screaming in the distance. The mountain is no longer just a mountain. It has become a mouth, roaring its fury at the heavens. And Julia knows, with a certainty that chills her blood, that the world she knew is ending. In the grand villa of the city, a wealthy politician named Decimus is hosting a lavish banquet. He's a man who believes he controls his destiny. But as he raises a golden goblet to toast the gods, a violent tremor throws him to the floor. The marble columns of his atrium sway, and a fresco of Venus cracks from ceiling to floor. His guests scream, scattering like roaches. Decimus, however, is not afraid. He's angry. He sees this not as an omen, but as an inconvenience. He orders his slaves to clean the mess, to prepare more wine, to pretend everything is normal. But his most trusted slave, a Greek man named Edios, pulls him aside. He's seen Vesuvius from the hills. He whispers of a coming doom, of a fire that will consume the world. Decimus laughs. He calls him a superstitious fool. But as another tremor hits, and the sky outside turns as black as night, Decimus feels the first cold finger of true, primal fear trace his spine. His power, his wealth, his precious control, all of it is an illusion. The air is now thick with ash, turning day into an unnatural twilight. The streets of Pompeii are a chaotic river of panic. Families clutch each other, clutching their few precious belongings. Slaves are abandoned. Masters are forgotten. A blind beggar, who has spent his life navigating these streets by memory, now stands helpless as the landmarks he knew crumble around him. He feels the ash fill his mouth, his lungs. He reaches out, but no one stops to help. In this moment of crisis, the thin veneer of civilization burns away, revealing the raw, selfish instinct to survive. But there are others. A young Roman soldier, his armor dented and covered in ash, abandons his post. He runs back towards the gladiator barracks, not to save himself, but to free his friends, the men he fought alongside. He knows they are locked in the cells below, condemned to die. He would rather die fighting for them than live with the shame of running away. The mountain roars again, a sound so loud it feels like the sky is being torn in two. By now, the harbor is a graveyard of boats, crushed under a hail of pumice stones. The sea, once a calm blue, is a boiling, churning mess. Admiral Pliny the Elder has made his decision. He will not flee. He will sail directly into the heart of the danger. He is a Roman. He has a duty. He orders his ships toward Stabii, a town closer to the mountain, to rescue anyone who can be saved. His nephew, Pliny the Younger, watches from the safety of Misenum, his heart pounding with a mix of terror and awe. He will never see his uncle again. The great admiral, the man who wrote about nature's wonders, is about to become a victim of its most violent fury. As the flagship disappears into the wall of ash, a question hangs in the sulphurous air: will anyone in Pompeii survive? What choices will be made in the final hour? And what secrets will be buried with them for nearly 2,000 years? This is the story of their last day, and the beginning of an eternal mystery. But wait. What was the secret that a humble gladiator was willing to die for in that cursed arena? And what did Decimus truly know about the mountain's power? Stay with us, and subscribe to uncover the truth buried beneath the ashes. The stone streets of Pompeii have become a river of gray. Each step Julia takes sends a plume of ash into the air, and the heat radiating from the ground is so intense she can feel it through the soles of her sandals. Her bakery, the source of her family's pride, is now a collapsed ruin behind her. But her heart is not with the oven or the grain. It's with her mother, who was supposed to be at the Temple of Fortuna. Julia pushes against the tide of fleeing citizens, screaming her mother's name into the swirling chaos. A man shoves her hard, and she stumbles into a wall, scraping her arm. She looks up and sees the Forum, once a grand open space of columns and statues, now a surreal, ashen battlefield. The statues of the gods are covered in gray, looking like mournful ghosts. A woman lies motionless near the steps, her hand still reaching out for something, or someone, she lost. The mountain erupts again with a deafening boom, and the ground shudders violently, knocking Julia off her feet. This is no longer an escape. It's a desperate search for a miracle. While Julia searches, Senator Decimus is not thinking about the citizens. He is thinking about his gold. His villa on the outskirts of the city is a fortress of marble and glass, but its walls are now shaking like leaves. He shoves his prized silver and coins into a heavy wooden chest, his hands trembling. His wife, Helena, pleads with him to leave the fortune behind, to just run. But Decimus cannot comprehend a world where his wealth does not protect him. He screams at a slave to carry the chest, but the slave, a young man named Octus, looks at the mountain and then back at his master. Octus sees the truth. The senator's money is worthless against this god. Octus makes a choice. He turns and runs, leaving Decimus screaming in fury. The senator's face twists from rage to terror as a large chunk of the ceiling collapses onto the chest, scattering his gold across the marble floor. He doesn't care about the gold now. He cares about his life. He pushes his wife towards the door, but the exits are blocked by a pile of burning debris. They are trapped in their own magnificent prison. The man who thought he owned the world is about to be buried by it. Amidst the chaos, a figure moves against the crowd with a terrifying calm. He is Alexandros, a Greek scholar who has lived in Pompeii for years, studying the mountain as a curiosity. Now, he understands it is a tombstone. He clutches a scroll to his chest, a copy of an ancient text he found in the library of Herculaneum. It describes a similar catastrophe that destroyed a Minoan city centuries ago, a warning he had presented to the city council. They had laughed at him. They had called him a madman. They had said the mountain was a god of peace. He looks at the sky, which is now raining a fine, gray powder. He knows the worst is not the ash or the rocks. The worst is the heat. He looks toward the mountain, and he sees it clearly now, a column of superheated gas and rock rising miles into the sky, beginning to collapse under its own weight. He knows that when it falls, it will not be a wave of water or stone. It will be a wave of pure death, moving faster than any horse can run. He begins to run, not toward the city gates, but towards the harbor, hoping to find a ship. He knows he cannot save Pompeii. But perhaps he can save the secret he carries. In the dim, smoky barracks, the Roman soldier, Marcus, finally reaches the locked cell. His hands are bloodied from tearing at the door, his sword is long gone. Inside, his friend, the gladiator named Ferox, is silent, his eyes watching the cracks forming in the stone ceiling. Marcus yells for a key, but there is no one left to ask. In a final, desperate act, he picks up a heavy stone and slams it against the lock. The metal groans but holds. He does it again and again, his arms burning with exhaustion. Finally, the lock shatters. The door swings open. Ferox steps out, his chains still on his wrists, but his eyes are fierce. He looks at Marcus, not with gratitude, but with a grim understanding. There is no time for thanks. They are both condemned men. As they emerge into the chaos, they see a family trapped under a fallen column, a mother shielding her child. Ferox looks at his broken chains, then at the desperate family. He makes his choice. He runs towards them, his massive hands grabbing the stone, trying to lift it. Marcus, the soldier who was taught to obey orders, follows him. In this dying world, they have found a new purpose, not to fight for an empire, but to fight for a single, desperate life. Out on the churning bay, Admiral Pliny the Elder's flagship is being torn apart. Huge waves, triggered by the earthquake, crash over the decks, while a hail of pumice and ash pounds the crew. The admiral, his face blackened with soot, stands firm at the helm, barking orders. This is not a rescue mission anymore. It is a fight for survival. The wind, which normally fills their sails, is now blowing directly from the volcano, pushing them away from the shore. The pilot of the ship, a veteran sailor from Greece, tells Pliny they cannot make it to Stabii. They must turn back to Misenum. Pliny looks at the wall of ash ahead of them, a swirling, glowing mass. He sees a flicker of light, a signal from the shore. Someone is still alive there, waving a torch. Against all logic, against all reason, Pliny gives the order. They will not turn back. They will push forward. He quotes a line from his own book, a phrase about the power of nature to humble even the greatest of men. The ship groans, sails tearing, as it lurches forward into the heart of the storm. Pliny the Elder is going to meet his destiny, but he will do it with his eyes wide open, a Roman commander to the last. The heat is becoming unbearable. It is no longer an ash fall, it is a burning wind. The column of fire from Vesuvius is now collapsing, a black, churning cloud tumbling down the mountain slopes. It races through the abandoned villages, vaporizing everything in its path. In Pompeii, the air itself begins to burn. Julia, her search for her mother fruitless, is swept up in the final surge of the crowd, pushed towards the Nasirian gate. She turns her head for one last look at her home, and she sees it. A wave of darkness, a wall of suffocating heat and ash, moving with terrifying speed. It is not a cloud. It is a flood of fire. A man next to her, a wealthy merchant who had been clutching a bag of pearls, drops his treasure and begins to pray. Julia does not pray. She thinks of her mother's face. She thinks of the warm bread they used to share. She thinks of the life she will never live. The wave is almost upon them, its roar drowning out all other sounds. It will not discriminate between the just and the unjust, the rich and the poor, the free and the slave. It will erase them all. As the darkness descends, a final question burns in the air, a question that will echo for centuries. What does a civilization look like when it faces its own end? And what secrets will remain beneath the ash for us to find? The story of Pompeii is not just about a city that died. It is about the people who lived. And one of them, a gladiator named Ferox, was carrying a secret that could have changed everything. What was it? And who else knew? Subscribe and hit the bell, because in our next episode, we will dig into the final moments of the city and the buried truths that have just begun to surface. The sky has turned black. It is noon, but it is midnight. Julia, the baker's daughter, is no longer searching. She is running. The Nasirian gate is a wall of flesh, 1,000 souls pushing and screaming. She is knocked to the ground. For a moment, she is beneath the crowd, the air crushed from her lungs. Then a hand grabs her. It is the old soothsayer from the forum, his face a mask of ash. He pulls her up, dragging her into a side street, away from the mob. Not that way, he hisses, his voice cracked. The sea is the only way. But the sea is miles away, and the mountain is roaring. They stumble into the temple of Isis, its columns already cracked. The priests are gone, their rituals abandoned. Inside, the air is thick with smoke. Julia's lungs burn. She sees the rich merchant from the forum, the one with the pearls, now a broken man, weeping on the altar steps. He offers the goddess all his gold for his life. The goddess is silent. Only the mountain answers, with a sound like the world being torn in two. The earth trembles again. A section of the temple wall collapses, sending a cloud of dust and stone into the air. Julia shields the old man with her body. When she looks up, she sees the merchant, his gold forgotten, running out into the chaos of the street. He doesn't get far. A rain of burning pumice, now the size of fists, hammers down from the sky. He is struck, and he falls, his fine clothes igniting. The soothsayer pulls Julia away from the sight. His judgment is not ours to watch, he says. They find a stairway leading to the temple's underground water cistern. It is dark, and the air is still. For a moment, there is a horrible silence. Julia can hear her own heart. I have seen this, the old man whispers, his eyes glowing in the dark. In a dream, 40 years ago. A mountain that burned the sky and drank the sea. I thought it was a metaphor. I was a fool. Julia doesn't understand. She just wants her mother. She wants to be back in her bakery, the smell of bread filling the air. But that world is gone. It died when the mountain woke up. Across the city, in the shadow of the collapsing forum, Marcus the soldier is not hiding. He is fighting. He and Ferox, the gladiator, are pushing against the tide of panic, their swords drawn not for battle, but to clear a path. They have found a group of children, separated from their parents, huddled beneath an archway. We cannot take them with us. Marcus shouts over the roar. Ferox, his face a mask of scars and determination, looks at the children. Then we die with them, he says. It is not a choice. It is a fact. They form a shield around the small group, inching their way towards the gladiator barracks, a structure built of thick stone that might hold for a while longer. The air is a furnace. Every breath is a knife. They reach the barracks, the heavy wooden doors groaning. Inside, it is chaos. Other gladiators, forgotten by the games, are trying to break their chains. Ferox knows one of them, a brute named Castus. The chains are not our enemy today. Ferox yells. The mountain is. Break them if you can, but use your strength to block the doors. Castus, seeing the logic, turns his powerful shoulder against a collapsing wall. They are all beasts in the same cage now, and the cage is on fire. But the stone walls are not enough. A sound like 1,000 chariots' wheels begins to build, a deafening, earth-shaking roar. It is not an earthquake. It is the mountain itself, breathing out its death. The first pyroclastic surge, a ground-hugging cloud of superheated gas and rock, rolls over the city walls like a tidal wave. In the barracks, the temperature spikes. Wood ignites spontaneously. The air is sucked out of the room. Marcus throws himself over the children, shielding them from the initial blast of heat. Ferox grabs a fallen shield and holds it up as a barrier. The world becomes a screaming, suffocating darkness. Then, as suddenly as it began, the first wave passes. It was not the final one, but it was a taste of hell. Marcus lifts his head. The children are alive, coughing, crying, but alive. Ferox is on his knees, his back blistered, but he is breathing. Marcus looks at the gladiator, a bond forged in fire forming between them. The harbor, Marcus chokes out. We need to get to the harbor. Ferox nods, his eyes fixed on a point beyond the wall. I know a way, he says. A secret way. A smuggler's route. The secret Ferox has been carrying, the one that could change everything, is finally about to be revealed. On the shore at Stabii, Admiral Pliny the Elder is a broken man. He has been struck by a falling rock, a fragment of the mountain's fury, and his shoulder is shattered. His officers beg him to retreat, to find shelter, to save himself. He refuses. Fortune favors the bold, he quotes, his voice a whisper. But he knows it is not fortune he is seeking. It is his friend, Pomponianus, who is still somewhere on the beach, trapped. Pliny struggles to his feet, his body racked with pain. He calls for a blanket, and he has his slaves lay it on the ground. Then, he does something strange. He asks for cold water, and he drinks deeply. He lies down on the blanket. I am not fleeing, he tells his men. I am resting. And then I am going back for my friend. The air is thick with sulfur. It is hard to breathe. His men watch in horror as their admiral, their hero, begins to choke. The poisonous vapors are overwhelming him. He is not dying from a wound. He is being suffocated by the very earth itself. The great man, who wrote of nature's power with such eloquence, is being humbled by it, personally, brutally. He is gone. The admiral, the scholar, the man who saw the world with such clear eyes, has been silenced by a mountain. His body lies on the beach, a small, insignificant speck in the face of the apocalypse. But his story is not over. It will be told by his nephew, Pliny the Younger, who watched from across the bay, and who will write it down for all of history. In Pompeii, in the suffocating dark of the gladiator barracks, Ferox is leading the survivors towards a forgotten drain, a passage that he used to use to escape after fights. It is a long shot, a desperate gamble. It leads to the harbor, but the harbor is a churning cauldron of boiling water and ash. As they crawl through the narrow, stinking tunnel, the second, larger pyroclastic surge hits the city. They feel the heat through the stone. They hear the screams of 1,000 souls instantly vaporized above them. The tunnel begins to collapse. They must run. They must crawl. They must survive. But the question that burned in the air before now has a new weight: can anyone truly escape the judgment of a god? And what is the secret that Ferox still hasn't shared? What did he see in the arena that haunts him more than this death? The answer, lying just beneath the ash of Pompeii, will change everything we thought we knew. What was the gladiator's secret? And will it cost them their lives? Subscribe and hit the bell, because in our next episode, we will unearth the truth from the ashes. But across the bay, in the villa at Misenum, a young man watches the world end. Pliny the Younger, the nephew of the dead admiral, is not a soldier. He is a scholar, a boy of 17 who prefers books to battles. But the battle is coming to him. The cloud of ash, shaped like a pine tree, is now a column of fire and smoke that blots out the sun. His mother, Pomponia, is terrified. "We must go," she pleads. "We must flee." But Pliny the Younger is frozen, not by fear, but by the terrible beauty of it. He is witnessing history, and he knows it. He starts to write, describing the shape of the cloud, the color of the sky, the panic of the people. He is not just a boy anymore. He is the recorder of the end of the world. And his words will outlive the mountain that is killing him. In the suffocating chaos of Pompeii, Julia is not writing history. She is drowning in it. She has lost her mother in the crowd, a sea of panicked faces all pushing towards the harbor. The air is thick with ash, and every breath is a mouthful of ground glass. She stumbles into the temple of Jupiter, the grandest building in the city, and finds it packed with the wealthy and the powerful. They are not praying. They are screaming. Senator Decimus is there, his toga torn, his face a mask of terror. He is no longer a corrupt official. He is a cornered animal. He sees Julia and grabs her arm. "You, baker. You have a cart. We need to move. Now." Julia pulls away. "I'm not your slave anymore, Senator," she spits. "We're all equal now. We're all dead." The temple shakes. The roof groans. A statue of Jupiter, the king of the gods, topples and shatters on the marble floor. The gods are not protecting them. The gods have abandoned them. Marcus and Ferox are not in the temple. They are in the streets, fighting for every inch of ground. The gladiator is true to his word. They are leading a group of children, the ones they saved from the collapsing insula, through the back alleys. The children are crying, but they are alive. "Where is the tunnel, Ferox?" Marcus shouts, his voice barely audible over the roar of the eruption. "It's in the gladiator barracks," Ferox yells back. "The drain we used to sneak out after fights. It leads to the harbor." The harbor. The words are a death sentence. The harbor is a boiling cauldron, but it's the only way out. They push forward. A building collapses in front of them, a wall of bricks and dust. Ferox shields a child with his body, taking the brunt of the debris. He grunts in pain. "Keep moving," he bellows. "We're almost there." They are not almost there. They are in a city that is being erased, and every step is a step into the unknown. They make it to the gladiator barracks, or what's left of it. The training ground is a crater of ash and broken stones. The cells where the gladiators were kept are open, the chains hanging loose. Ferox leads them to a corner of the complex, where a rusty iron grate covers a dark hole. "This is it," he says, his voice heavy with memory. "This is the drain." Marcus looks at the hole. It's barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. You used this to escape, he asks. Ferox laughs, a bitter sound. Used it to get out and see a woman. Never to escape. I was a slave, remember? But now. He looks at the children. Now it's our only way. He uses his sword to pry the grate loose. The smell that comes out is foul, a mix of sewage and death, but it's air. It's a way out. We go first, Marcus says, drawing his sword. I'll take point. Ferox, you bring up the rear. Watch the children. They crawl into the darkness, one by one. The tunnel is a nightmare. It's narrow, pitch black, and the floor is slick with filth. Marcus leads, his hands scraping against the rough stone walls, feeling his way forward. The children follow, their sobs echoing in the darkness. Behind them, Ferox crawls, his bulk barely fitting through the passage. The heat is intense, and the air is getting thinner. The mountain is breathing on them, and its breath is death. How far? Marcus shouts back. Not far, Ferox replies, but his voice is strained. Just past the arena, then it opens up at the harbor. The ground beneath them begins to shake violently. A shower of dust and small rocks falls from the ceiling. Run! Ferox screams. It's coming. They don't know what it is, but they feel it. A wave of pressure, a wall of scorching air, is pushing through the tunnel behind them. They scramble, clawing at the stones, the children crying, the men cursing. The tunnel is their tomb. Or their salvation. They can't tell which. They burst out of the tunnel, not into the harbor, but into a small, open-air courtyard near the city walls. The sky is a hellish orange, lit by the fire of the volcano. The harbor is just ahead, but it's a nightmare scene of burning ships and boiling water. We can't go there. Marcus gasps. We'll die. Ferox looks at the tunnel behind them, and then at the harbor. Then we die here, he says, his voice flat. He looks at the children, huddled together, their faces streaked with tears and ash. No, Marcus says. No, we don't. He points to a small, abandoned boat, half buried in the sand. We take that. We row out. We get as far as we can. It's a suicide mission. The boat is broken, the sea is a storm of ash and pumice. But it's a choice. The last choice they have. And in the end, that's all that matters. The choice to fight, to hope, to try. Even when the world is ending. What will they find on the water? And what about Julia, trapped in the temple with the corrupt senator? The answers are buried in the ash, waiting to be found. The boat is a death trap. Marcus knows it. The hull is cracked, the oars are splintered, and the sea is a boiling cauldron of ash and pumice. But it's the only thing between them and the mountain's fury. He shoves the children in, their small bodies trembling, their eyes wide with a terror no child should ever know. Push, he yells, and they all heave, the bow scraping against the black sand. The water is hot, steaming, and it burns their skin as they wade in. Ferox is the last to board, his weight nearly capsizing them. The sky is a solid wall of fire, and the air is so thick with ash, it feels like breathing sand. Row! Marcus screams, and they pull at the water, fighting the current, fighting the mountain, fighting the end of the world. The boat lurches, taking on water, but it moves. It moves. But the sea is a monster. The waves are not water, they are a thick, viscous slurry of ash and stone. The boat doesn't sail, it groans, it weeps, it fights for every inch. The children are silent now, their energy spent, their eyes fixed on the impossible horizon. Marcus rows until his hands are raw, until the blisters burst and bleed. We're taking on too much water. Ferox shouts, scooping the sludge out with his bare hands. The mountain behind them erupts with a sound that splits the sky itself. A wave, not of water, but of superheated gas and rock, races toward them across the bay. It's the surge. It's the end. Hold on. Marcus roars, bracing himself. The wave hits them, and the world becomes fire and noise and pain. The boat is hurled through the air, spinning, breaking apart. Marcus feels himself falling, into the black, boiling water. And then, nothing. Coughing. That's the first thing Marcus feels. Coughing, and the taste of copper and ash. He's on the shore, or what's left of it. The boat is gone, scattered across the black sand like a child's broken toy. He's alone. Ferox is gone. The children are gone. The wave threw him clear, but it took everything else. He crawls, dragging his broken body across the scorched earth. He sees a hand, small and pale, jutting out from under a piece of the hull. He digs, his nails tearing, his heart pounding. It's the smallest of the children, a girl. Her eyes are open, but they see nothing. He cradles her, this tiny, broken thing, and for the first time in his life, Marcus weeps. He weeps for her, for the others, for a city that was and is no more. The mountain still roars, but the sound is distant now. The world is quiet, save for his sobs and the hiss of the cooling ash. Meanwhile, in the temple of Jupiter, the world is ending in a different way. The air is thick with smoke and the screams of the dying. Senator Decimus, the man who once ruled this city, is now a cornered animal. The treasures he hoarded are scattered around him, meaningless piles of gold and silver. His eyes are wild, darting from the burning ceiling to the panicked crowd. Julia, the baker, watches him from the shadows. She sees the fear, the desperation, the complete collapse of a man who thought he was above it all. "You did this," she screams, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "You and your greed. You could have saved them." Decimus turns, his face twisted with rage. "I saved myself," he snarls, and he lunges at her, a dagger in his hand. But he's clumsy, blinded by panic. Julia dodges, and he stumbles, falling into a group of terrified citizens. They turn on him, their fear turning to fury. They don't need a senator anymore. They need a scapegoat. The temple collapses. It's not a slow, graceful fall, but a sudden, violent surrender to gravity and fire. The columns crack, the roof gives way, and the world becomes a storm of stone and dust. Julia is thrown clear by the blast, landing hard on the temple steps. She feels pain, but she's alive. She looks back, and the temple of Jupiter is a smoking ruin, the final resting place of Senator Decimus and countless others. She doesn't feel triumph. She feels nothing. The city is gone. Her mother is gone. Everything she knew is buried under a mountain of ash. She rises, stumbling through the nightmare landscape. She sees the harbor in the distance, a burning line of failed escapes. She sees the mountain, still spewing its fury at the sky. And she sees, half buried in the rubble of the temple, a small, dark opening. A stairway leading down. The priest's warning echoes in her mind: when the mountain speaks, the earth will open, and the dead will walk. Is this the way? Marcus sees the ship. It's a Roman warship, one of Pliny's fleet, listing badly in the harbor, but still afloat. It's hope. He drags himself toward it, his legs barely working, his lungs burning. The crew is in chaos, trying to free the ship from the burning debris. "Wait," he shouts, his voice a ragged croak. "Take me. I have information about the city." A sailor looks at him, his eyes hollow. The city is gone, soldier. There's nothing to save. Marcus points to the ship. Then take me to Misenum. I have to report what happened. I have to warn them. The sailor hesitates, then nods. They pull him aboard, a broken, ash-covered figure. He collapses on the deck, the last thing he sees being the warship's sail unfurling, catching the wind. As the ship pulls away, he looks back. Pompeii is a black scar on the earth, a tomb for thousands. He thinks of Julia, of Ferox, of the children. Are they out there, somewhere? Or are they just more bones in the ash? The mountain gives one final, thunderous roar, and a new cloud of death races down its slopes, swallowing what's left of the city. The world goes quiet. And then, the ship turns, and the harbor disappears behind a wall of smoke. The stairway descends into a darkness that feels older than the city itself. Each step Julia takes echoes with a sound that might be her own heartbeat, or might be something else. The air is thick with dust and the smell of damp stone. She runs her hand along the wall, feeling carved symbols, warnings she can't read but understands in her bones. This isn't a cellar. This is a passage, deliberately hidden, leading somewhere the city didn't want to admit existed. A faint light flickers ahead, not from a torch, but from something more organic, a strange, greenish glow. She stops at the bottom of the stairs, and the tunnel opens into a vast underground chamber. And she's not alone. A group of survivors huddle around a small fire, their faces gaunt with fear. They look at her, a ghost from the world above. In the center, an old woman with eyes that have seen too much stares at Julia. "You found us," she says, her voice a dry rasp. "The mountain's children always find the way down." The old woman's name is Octavia, and she was once a priestess of Ceres, a keeper of the old rites, before the Romans built their temples over hers. She tells Julia that this crypt is older than Pompeii itself, a remnant of a civilization that knew the mountain's true nature. They built their city on a sleeping giant, she says, pointing to the ceiling, and they forgot the old songs. We who remembered built this place, a refuge for the end of days. Julia's mind races. Her mother. She has to find her mother. But Octavia grabs her arm, her grip surprisingly strong. There is no going back up. The city is dead. The only way out is through the aqueducts that run beneath the city walls to the sea. She gestures to a dark tunnel on the far side of the chamber. But the way is long, and the mountain is not done. It will shake the earth again, and if we are in the tunnels when it does, we will be crushed. We must move now, or not at all. Julia looks at the tunnel, a black mouth waiting to swallow them. Aboard the warship, Marcus feels the deck lurch beneath him. The crew is shouting, but their voices are muffled, as if he's underwater. He pushes himself up, his body screaming in protest. The captain is dead, a fallen statue crushed by a falling mast. The helmsman is gone. The ship is drifting, a ghost vessel in a sea of ash. He stumbles to the helm, his hands finding the worn wood. He's a soldier, not a sailor, but the basics are the same: keep the bow into the wind, don't let the ship turn broadside. You there, he shouts to a terrified sailor. Get to the lines. Trim the sails. We're heading for Misenum. The sailor just stares at him, his eyes empty. Marcus grabs him by the tunic, shaking him. Do you want to die here? Then move. The man snaps out of it, nodding, and starts shouting orders to the others. Marcus grips the helm, his knuckles white. He looks back at the burning city, a pyre on the horizon. He left something behind. Someone. I'll come back, he whispers to the ash-filled wind. I swear it. Back in the crypt, the ground begins to tremble. Not a gentle shudder, but a deep, violent groan that shakes dust from the ceiling. The survivors cry out, clutching each other. The mountain speaks. Octavia shouts. We must go now. She leads them into the dark tunnel, carrying a small oil lamp that casts long, dancing shadows. The passage is narrow, forcing them to move single file. Julia is at the back, her hand on the shoulder of a young boy in front of her, to keep him from falling behind. The tremor intensifies. A crack splits the wall beside them, and a chunk of stone falls, barely missing a woman's head. The tunnel is collapsing. Run! Octavia screams. They break into a desperate sprint, the walls groaning around them. The darkness ahead is absolute, broken only by the bobbing light of the lamp. Julia's lungs burn, her legs feel like lead. She can hear the mountain roaring, feel it shaking the very foundations of the earth. And then, just as she thinks they can't go on, she sees it. A faint, gray light ahead. The end of the tunnel. But as they burst out, blinking in the ash-filled daylight, they find themselves on a narrow ledge, overlooking the churning, debris-filled sea. They are trapped. Octavia stands at the edge of the ledge, her face a mask of despair. The sea is a roiling mass of pumice and ash, too rough to swim, too wide to cross. The cliff walls are sheer, offering no handholds. They are trapped between the mountain and the deep. We have to go back, a man pleads. Back into the tunnel. Octavia shakes her head. It's collapsed behind us. There is no going back. Julia stares at the water, her mind racing. She remembers the harbor, the broken boats. She remembers something her father, a fisherman, once told her: when the sea is angry, it spits out what it doesn't want. But it also pushes things to shore. She looks down. Below them, half buried in the ash and debris at the base of the cliff, is a small fishing boat, battered but intact, wedged between two rocks. There, she exclaims, pointing. We can reach it. We can use it. Octavia looks at the tiny boat, then back at the group. It won't hold us all. Julia's heart sinks. She looks at the faces around her, the fear, the hope. She knows what she has to do. Then we make a choice, she says, her voice steady. We stay here and die, or we take the boat and some of us live. It's the only way. On the warship, Marcus squints through the ash, his eyes stinging. A sailor points to the coastline. There, sir. A light. Marcus follows his gaze. On a cliff, barely visible through the gloom, a small signal fire flickers. Someone is alive. Someone is signaling for help. Change course. Marcus orders. We're going to get them. The helmsman hesitates. The rocks, sir. It's too dangerous. Marcus draws his sword, the blade gleaming dully. I didn't survive the end of the world to let someone else die. Get us in there, or I'll throw you overboard myself. The crew moves, the ship turning toward the shore. Marcus feels a strange, flickering hope. A signal fire on a cliff. Could it be the survivors from the harbor? Could it be her? He grips the rail, his eyes fixed on the tiny, defiant flame. The mountain bellows behind them, but for the first time in hours, Marcus isn't listening. He's looking forward. And he's asking himself a question that will haunt him for the rest of his life: who, in this hell, is still alive to light a fire? And what will he find when he gets there? If you want to know who's behind that fire, and what impossible choice they had to make to survive, then you need to stay with us. Subscribe now, so you don't miss the next chapter of Pompeii, the last day. The boat is a splintered shell, but it's a shell that floats. Octavia is the first to move, her voice cutting through the panic. We need to get down there. now. But the descent is a nightmare. The cliff face crumbles at every touch, the ash turning the rock to sand. They lower themselves down, one by one, a human chain of desperate hands and scraping boots. The boat, half buried, is held fast by the debris. They dig with their bare hands, their fingers bleeding. The mountain roars again, a sound like the world splitting in two. A chunk of the cliff above them breaks away, tumbling past their heads. "We're running out of time," a woman screams. They finally free the boat, and it hisses as it slides into the water. It's so small. It's so fragile. The sea, churning with pumice and ash, looks like a boiling pot. They drag it to the water's edge, and the waves immediately try to tear it from their grasp. "Get in! Get in now!" Octavia shouts. The boat bucks in the water like a wild animal. It's meant for 2, maybe 3 fishermen, not 8. But they pile in, pushing and shoving, their weight threatening to capsize it. Octavia grabs Julia's arm. "You said we had to choose." Julia looks at the faces in the boat, the fear, the relief. Then she looks at those left on the shore. An old man, a mother with 2 children, a wounded soldier. She can't do it. She can't make that choice. "We'll make 2 trips," she says, her voice trembling. "We'll come back." Octavia shakes her head. "You know we won't. Look at the waves. We'll be lucky to make it past the breakers." Julia feels the despair closing in. She looks at the boat, already overloaded. She looks at the people on the shore, their eyes pleading. She steps into the water, the cold shock hitting her like a blow. "Get out," she says, her voice low. "3 of you. Get out." The mother clutches her children tighter. Julia forces herself to look at her. "I'm sorry. But the rest of us will die if you don't." The woman opens her mouth to protest, but no sound comes out. She looks at her children, then at the boat. Slowly, she steps out, pulling her children with her. The wounded soldier follows, his face a mask of pain. They push the boat out, the oars biting into the black water. The sea is thick with pumice, and every stroke is a battle. Julia rose, her muscles screaming, her eyes fixed on the distant, uncertain shape of the shore. The boat is low in the water, the waves sloshing over the sides. "Bail!" Octavia shouts, and they use their hands, their helmets, anything to scoop the water out. The mountain bellows, and a shower of ash rains down on them. Julia looks back. The cliff is now a dark silhouette. She can see the tiny figures of those they left behind, huddled at the water's edge. She can't look anymore. She turns back to the oars. "Keep rowing," she shouts, her voice cracking. "Don't stop. Don't you dare stop." The boat rises on a swell, and for a moment, Julia can see the harbor, a broken line of debris and half-sunk ships. It's closer now. It's almost within reach. But then she sees it. A wave, larger than the rest, rising out of the gloom, a wall of black water and ash. "Hold on!" Octavia screams. The wave hits them, and the world turns upside down. Julia is underwater, the cold darkness swallowing her. She kicks, her lungs burning, and breaks the surface, gasping for air. The boat is overturned, a few hands clinging to its side. "Julia!" Octavia's voice, frantic. Julia swims, the pumice stinging her skin, and grabs onto the hull. She looks around. There are only a few of them left. The old man is gone. The wounded soldier is gone. "We have to right it," Octavia shouts. They struggle against the sea, their muscles spent, and somehow, they manage to flip the boat back over. They climb in, waterlogged, shivering, their hope barely a flicker. Julia's hands are raw, her body trembling. She looks at the harbor. It's so close. She can see the mast of a sunken ship, the broken columns of the waterfront. But the current is pulling them away. We're not going to make it, a man whispers. Julia looks at him, his face ashen. Yes, we are, she says, her voice barely a whisper. She picks up an oar, her hands bleeding. We're going to make it. She starts to row, her strokes weak but determined. And then, through the ash and the gloom, she sees it. A light. A small, bright flame on a cliff to the east. Marcus sees the flame grow closer, a defiant speck in a world of ash and death. There. Aim for that cliff, he shouts to the helmsman. The warship groans as it turns, its hull scraping against submerged rocks. We can't get any closer, sir, the helmsman yells. The water's too shallow. Marcus looks at the distance. It's 100 yards, maybe more. He can see the tiny boat in the water now, a few figures clinging to it. He can see them. He can see her. Lower the boat, he orders. We're going to get them. The crew scrambles, lowering a small launch into the churning sea. You. Marcus points at 4 sailors. With me. He jumps into the launch, his sword still in his hand. The sailors row, their faces grim. The mountain erupts again, a shower of pumice raining down on them. They reach the small fishing boat, and Marcus sees Julia, her face pale, her hands bleeding. Grab her, he shouts. The sailors pull her into the launch, her body limp. Marcus looks at her, his heart pounding. I've got you, he says, his voice low. He looks at the others in the launch. We're going back to the ship. Now. They pull Julia aboard the warship, and she collapses on the deck, gasping for air. Octavia is next, then a few others. Marcus kneels beside Julia, his hand on her shoulder. You're safe now, he says. She looks up at him, her eyes filled with a pain he doesn't understand. Not all of us, she whispers. He looks away, his jaw tight. He knows. He saw the boat. He saw how few of them were on it. Get them below deck, he orders. We're getting out of here. The sailors move, helping the survivors below. Marcus stands at the rail, watching the cliff recede into the ash. The signal fire is gone. He wonders who lit it. He wonders if they're still alive. He feels a hand on his arm. It's Julia. Who was it? She asks, her voice weak. Who was on the cliff? Marcus looks at her, his face unreadable. I don't know, he says. But they saved your life. He turns back to the sea. The warship sails on, leaving Pompeii behind. The mountain still bellows, but the sound is fading. They are alive. They are safe. But as Marcus looks at the faces of the survivors, he sees the question in their eyes. The question that will haunt them forever. Who did we leave behind? And was it worth it? The warship cuts through the ash-choked water, but the silence on deck is heavier than the falling pumice. Julia stands at the rail, her hands still trembling, her eyes fixed on the fading silhouette of the mountain. Marcus approaches her, his voice low. The signal fire, he says. Who was it? Who was on that cliff? She doesn't answer at first. She just stares at the horizon, as if she can still see the faces she left behind. My mother, she finally whispers. She was there. She was the one who lit the fire. Marcus flinches. He remembers the old woman he saw, standing alone on the edge of the cliff, a torch in her hand. She gave her life so you could escape, he says. Julia turns to him, her eyes filled with a rage he doesn't understand. She gave her life because I let her, she says. I chose who got on the boat. I chose who lived and who died. The words hang in the air, heavy as the ash on the deck. Marcus has no answer. He has seen death, but he has never had to make that choice. The ship sails on through a nightmare. The sea is a soup of pumice and ash, and the sky is a permanent, bruised twilight. The survivors huddle together on the deck, their faces blank with shock. Marcus moves among them, giving orders, checking on the wounded. He finds Octavia, the senator's wife, sitting alone, her fine dress torn, her eyes hollow. Your husband, Marcus says. I didn't see him on the boat. Octavia looks up at him, a bitter smile on her lips. Decimus. He was the first to run when the ash started falling. He said he had a plan. A secret way out. He probably made it to the harbor and took the first ship he could find, leaving us all to die. Marcus says nothing. He has seen enough of men like Decimus. He turns away, his eyes scanning the sea. And then he sees it. A small boat, adrift in the water. It's not moving. It's just bobbing in the waves, half submerged. There, he shouts. A boat. Look alive. The crew rushes to the rail, their hopes rising. But as they get closer, their faces fall. The boat is full of bodies. Men, women, children. They are all dead, their faces frozen in a final, silent scream. It's a ghost ship, a tomb floating on the water. Marcus orders the sailors to push the ghost ship away with long poles, unable to bear the sight of the dead. But Julia stares at the boat, her eyes wide, her mind racing. We have to check, she says, her voice hoarse. What if someone is alive? Marcus turns to her, his face grim. Look at them, Julia. They're gone. There's nothing we can do. But she doesn't listen. She stumbles to the rail, her hands gripping the wood. My mother, she whispers. What if she's on that boat? Marcus's heart sinks. He doesn't know what to say. He looks at the boat, at the pile of bodies, and he knows the chance is slim. But he also knows what it's like to hope for something that's impossible. We can't stop, he says, his voice firm. We have to keep moving. We have to get to Misenum. Julia doesn't argue. She just stares at the boat as it drifts away, her face a mask of pain. She knows he's right. But the image of her mother's face, cold and lifeless, will be burned into her memory forever. Below deck, the ship's doctor, an old Greek man named Phaedrus, tends to the wounded. His hands are steady, but his eyes are tired. He has seen too much death today. He cleans Julia's hands, wrapping them in clean linen. You're lucky, he says. The cuts are deep, but they're not infected. Julia winces as he ties the bandage. Lucky, she repeats, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. Is that what you call it? Phaedrus looks at her, his old eyes filled with a deep sadness. You're alive, girl. That's not luck. That's a second chance. Julia shakes her head. What about the others? The ones we left on the cliff? Did they get a second chance? Phaedrus doesn't answer. He just bows his head and continues his work. Julia looks around the cramped hold. She sees the faces of the survivors. They are all here, the ones she chose. But she can't shake the feeling that she's a fraud, that she doesn't deserve to be here. She looks at her bandaged hands. They feel clean now. But she knows they'll never be clean again. As the ship sails further from the doomed coast, the ash begins to thin, and a pale, watery light breaks through the clouds. Marcus stands at the helm, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He can see the faint outline of Misenum in the distance. They're going to make it. But as he watches the shore approach, a figure emerges from below deck. It's Alexandros, the Greek scholar. His face is bruised, his clothes torn, but his eyes are bright with a strange, feverish intensity. "I need to speak with you," he says, his voice urgent. Marcus turns to him, his hand resting on his sword. "About what?" Alexandros looks around, lowering his voice. "The mountain," he says. "This was not a natural disaster. It was a warning. The gods are angry, and they will not stop until the entire world is cleansed." Marcus stares at him, his jaw tight. "We don't have time for your prophecies, scholar. We're almost safe." Alexandros shakes his head. "Safe? We will never be safe. The signs are all there. The earth shook, the sea boiled, the sky turned to fire. This is just the beginning." He leans closer, his voice a whisper. "I have seen it before. In my studies. This is the end of an era. And we are the only ones who know the truth." The warship finally docks at Misenum, and the survivors step onto solid ground for the first time in what feels like an eternity. The air is cleaner here, but the smell of ash still clings to their clothes, their hair, their skin. Julia stands on the dock, her legs weak, her mind spinning. She is safe. She is alive. But she can't feel anything. She looks at the other survivors. They are all here. Octavia, the senator's wife. The children they rescued. The few others who made it. But she knows the cost. She knows the faces she left behind. Marcus stands beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "You're going to be okay," he says. Julia looks at him, her eyes hollow. "Am I?" she asks. "How can I be okay when I left my mother to die? When I chose who lived and who died?" Marcus has no answer. He just looks at her, his own soul scarred. The eruption is over. Pompeii is gone. But the real journey has just begun. And the question that haunts them all is not what they survived, but what they have become. What did the mountain take from them? And what did it leave behind? If you want to know what happens to Julia, Marcus, and the other survivors as they face the aftermath of the apocalypse and the secrets they have brought with them, subscribe to the channel and join us in the next chapter. The dock at Misenum is a blur of noise and chaos. Sailors shout, families weep, and the air is thick with the smell of salt and smoke. But Marcus hears none of it. He sees only Julia, standing apart from the crowd, her gaze fixed on the gray horizon where Vesuvius once stood. He approaches her slowly, his own heart heavy with the weight of what they've endured. "Julia," he says, his voice low. She doesn't turn. "We need to talk about what comes next." She finally looks at him, and he sees a fire in her eyes that wasn't there before. "What comes next?" she repeats, her voice trembling but fierce. "We bury our dead, Marcus. We honor those we left behind. And then we find out why the gods chose us to survive." Alexandros is not content to simply survive. He finds Marcus on the deck of the ship, his eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting another attack. "The prophecy is not complete," he says, his voice a low, urgent murmur. "I have studied the scrolls in Athens. The eruption is only the first act. The gods demand a sacrifice to purify the world, and if we do not understand their will, they will bring the fire again." Marcus scoffs. "You speak of gods and sacrifices. I speak of men and their failures." Alexandros's face grows pale. "Then you are a fool, soldier. The mountain is a weapon. And someone is wielding it. He pulls out a fragment of a clay tablet, its surface covered in ancient, unfamiliar script. I found this in the rubble. It's a warning. It speaks of a second cataclysm, one that will be born from the ashes of the first. The survivors are given shelter in a makeshift camp outside Misenum. Tents line the shore, and the air is filled with the cries of the wounded and the whispers of the terrified. Julia walks through the camp, her heart aching with every face she sees. She finds a small crowd gathered around a makeshift altar to Isis, the goddess of healing and magic. A priestess with wild, unkempt hair is chanting, her voice rising above the din. The mountain has spoken, she cries. It has shown us the wrath of the gods. But there are signs. Signs of what is to come. She points to the sky, where a strange, greenish light begins to flicker. The earth will shake again. The sea will rise up. We must prepare for the second coming of the fire. Julia feels a chill run down her spine. She looks at the faces around her. They are filled with a new, deeper terror. Marcus finds Julia at the edge of the camp, staring at the distant, smoldering mountain. The priestess is spreading fear, he says. It's making things worse. Julia turns to him. Is she wrong, Marcus? We saw the sky turn to fire. We saw the earth swallow our city. How can we be sure it won't happen again? Marcus is silent for a long moment. We can't, he admits. But we can't live our lives waiting for the end. We have to find a way to move forward. Julia shakes her head. How do we move forward when we don't know what we're moving towards? She looks at him, her eyes pleading. You heard Alexandros. He says this is just the beginning. He says there is a reason. I need to know why. I need to know if my mother's death meant something. Later that night, Alexandros gathers Marcus, Julia, and a few of the other survivors in a small tent. He unrolls a worn map on the ground. The mountain is a prison, he says, his voice barely a whisper. It holds a power that was sealed away by the ancients. The eruption was not a punishment from the gods, it was a breach in the prison walls. And what was sealed inside is now free. He points to a spot on the map, far from Pompeii. There is another place, an ancient sanctuary built to contain such forces. If we can reach it, we may find a way to understand what we are facing. Julia looks at the map, her heart pounding. And if we don't? Alexandros meets her gaze, his face grim. Then the world will face a darkness that makes Vesuvius look like a candle flame. He looks at Marcus. We need to go back. To the ruins. To find the answers the mountain has buried. The decision is made. At dawn, they will leave Misenum and head back towards the smoking ruin of Pompeii. Marcus watches Julia as she prepares her small pack, her movements deliberate and focused. He sees the pain in her every gesture, the ghost of her mother in her eyes. You don't have to do this, he says softly. She looks at him, a sad smile on her lips. Yes, I do. I can't stay here, safe in this camp, pretending the world is normal. Not when I know what's out there. Not when I have a chance to find out why. She takes a deep breath. I'm not the same person who baked bread in Pompeii, Marcus. That woman died with the city. I'm something else now. Marcus nods, understanding. We all are. He looks towards the east, where the first gray light of dawn is beginning to break. Then let's go find our answers. They step out of the tent, leaving the safety of Misenum behind, and walk towards the mountain that still smolders on the horizon. The journey is just beginning. But what will they find when they get there? And what new secrets will the ashes reveal? The road back to Pompeii is not a road anymore. It's a scar carved through a gray, lifeless world. The ash is deep here, swallowing the sound of their footsteps, muffling the world into a dead, heavy silence. Julia pulls her shawl tighter, but it does nothing against the cold that seeps up from the ground. Every step feels like walking on the bones of the past. They pass a farmhouse, its roof collapsed, a single charred wooden beam pointing accusingly at the pale sky. A cart lies on its side, its wheels still intact, but the oxen are gone. Just bones in the ash. Alexandros walks ahead, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the mountain still breathes a thin, poisonous smoke. He's looking for something, but he won't say what. Marcus is silent, his hand never straying far from his sword. The silence is broken by a sound that makes them all freeze. A low, guttural groan, like the earth itself is in pain. It's not thunder. It's something far worse. They find the source of the sound. It's not the earth. It's a man. A Roman soldier, or what's left of one, half buried in the ash beside a collapsed section of the aqueduct. His armor is dented, his face caked with gray dust, but his eyes are wild with terror. He's alive. When he sees them, he doesn't reach out for help. He screams. Get back. Get away from the stones. He's clawing at the ground, trying to push himself deeper into the ash. Marcus kneels beside him, trying to calm him. Soldier, we're here to help. What happened here? The man's eyes dart to the broken stones of the aqueduct, then back to Marcus. We heard it, he whispers, his voice cracking. We were guarding the water supply when we heard it. A sound from under the ground. Not an earthquake. Something, moving. He points a trembling finger at the dark opening where the aqueduct has collapsed. It came out of the dark. Took the others. I ran, but... His voice trails off as he looks at his own legs, buried in the ash. I can't feel them anymore. The soldier's words hang in the air like a curse. Something, moving. Julia feels a chill that has nothing to do with the cold. She thinks of the crypt beneath the temple of Jupiter, the strange sounds they heard there. Alexandros steps forward, his face pale. He pushes past Marcus and kneels by the collapsed aqueduct, peering into the darkness. He's not raving, Alexandros says, his voice low. The aqueducts run deep, connecting to older structures. The Etruscans built tunnels beneath this land long before Rome existed. They were not just for water. They were for other things. He stands up, his eyes wide with a sudden, terrifying realization. The prison is not just the mountain. It's everything beneath it. The eruption didn't just break the seal on the mountain. It broke the seals on all the old places. The soldier lets out a choked sob. You have to leave. You have to go back. It's not safe here. Not anymore. The stones are not our friends. They remember everything. They leave the soldier behind, giving him water and a cloak. There's nothing else they can do. His legs are broken. He won't last the night. As they walk away, Julia can't shake the image of his terrified face. What did he mean, the stones remember, she asks. Alexandros doesn't answer at first. He walks in silence, his staff clicking against the ash-covered ground. Finally, he stops. There are places in this land that are older than the gods of Rome. Older than the Republic. Places where the veil between our world and something else is thin. The Etruscans knew them. They built their sanctuaries there, not to worship the gods, but to keep something out. He looks at the mountain, its peak wreathed in a poisonous glow. The eruption didn't just destroy a city. It tore open a doorway. And now, things that were sealed away are waking up. The soldier saw something. Not a monster. A memory. A guardian. Something the ancients left behind to protect the seal. He looks at Marcus. We need to find the sanctuary I told you about. It's not just a place of knowledge. It's a fortress. And we are going to need its defenses. They follow the map, which leads them away from the coast, into the hills that overlook the ruined city. The landscape is even more desolate here, if that's possible. The ash is thinner, but the ground is cracked and fissured, as if the earth itself had been torn apart. It's late afternoon when they finally see it, a massive stone structure, half buried in the hillside. It's not Roman. The architecture is older, more primitive, with massive, rough-hewn stones that look like they were placed by giants. The sanctuary, Alexandros whispers, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and dread. They approach cautiously. The entrance is a dark, gaping archway, framed by two enormous stone pillars. Carved into the lintel above the arch is a symbol Julia doesn't recognize, a spiral, surrounded by strange, angular writing. As they step closer, Marcus draws his sword. I hear something, he says. From within the darkness of the sanctuary, a sound echoes out. It's not a growl or a moan. It's a low, rhythmic pounding. Like a heartbeat. But it's too slow. Too deep. Too ancient. The heartbeat is coming from inside the sanctuary. Alexandros lights a torch, the flame sputtering in the still, heavy air. The light reveals a large circular chamber, its walls covered in the same strange script as the lintel. In the center of the room is a massive stone altar, carved with the same spiral symbol. But it's not the altar that draws their eyes. It's what's behind it. A massive stone door, at least 20 feet high, set into the far wall. The door is covered in intricate carvings, depicting figures that are not human, and a battle that seems to rage across the stone itself. As they watch, the door shudders, a faint tremor running through the floor. The heartbeat quickens. There's something in there, Julia whispers. Alexandros moves closer, his torch illuminating a small, dark stain at the base of the door. It looks like dried blood. We're too late, he says, his voice hollow. They've already been here. The seals have been broken. But there's a record. A warning. We have to find it before whatever is in there finds us. He turns to the others, his face lit by the flickering torch. This is not just about Pompeii anymore. This is about everything. And we are the only ones who know the truth. The question is, are we brave enough to face it? And what will we find when we open the door that should have stayed closed forever? If you want to uncover the secret of the sanctuary and what was sealed inside, you need to stay with us. Subscribe now, because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew about the ancient world. The pounding isn't just a sound anymore. It's a vibration you feel in your chest, in your teeth, in the very marrow of your bones. Julia presses her back against the cold stone wall, her eyes fixed on that massive door. Marcus stands in front of her, his sword drawn, the blade trembling ever so slightly. Alexandros holds the torch higher, its light dancing across the carvings of a war that looks nothing like any battle ever fought by men. The figures have elongated limbs, too many joints, and eyes that seem to follow you. This isn't a tomb, he says, his voice barely a whisper. It's a prison. The heartbeat quickens again, and a fine dust rains down from the ceiling. The floor shudders. Something on the other side of that door is awake. And it knows we're here. Alexandros tears his gaze away from the door and begins to scan the walls, his fingers tracing the strange script. There has to be a record, a warning left by those who built this place. Julia, her heart hammering against her ribs, forces herself to move. She can't just stand here, frozen. She starts to search the chamber, her eyes scanning the floor, the corners, the shadows where the torchlight doesn't reach. Marcus keeps his back to them, facing the door, ready for anything. The air is thick with the smell of dust and something else, something metallic and old. It's the smell of dried blood. That stain at the base of the door is fresh. Whoever was here before them didn't just break the seals. They paid for it with their lives. The question is, who were they? And what did they unleash? Then Julia sees it. Tucked behind the altar, almost invisible in the shadows, is a small niche in the wall. Inside, resting on a bed of black cloth, is a rolled-up scroll. But it's not made of papyrus. It's made of something darker, thicker, like animal skin. She reaches for it, her fingers brushing against the cool, smooth surface. As she lifts it, she feels a strange warmth emanating from it. "Alexandros," she calls out, her voice shaky. He rushes over, his eyes widening as he sees the scroll. He takes it from her with trembling hands, gently unrolling a small section. The writing is the same angular script, but it's accompanied by a series of diagrams. Diagrams of the mountain. Diagrams of a network of tunnels beneath it. And diagrams of that door, with a symbol of a broken chain above it. "This is it," he breathes. "This is the warning." It speaks of a slumbering giant, fed by the blood of the earth. Pompeii was just the first awakening. The warning is clear, but the knowledge is terrifying. The mountain isn't just a volcano. It's a prison. And the eruption was the first crack in the cell. Alexandros's voice is low and urgent as he translates the ancient text. It says the giant was chained here by the first people, before Rome was even a dream. They built this sanctuary to watch over it. But the chains were weakened by the fire. And now. He looks up, his face pale. Now it's waking up. And it's not alone. There are other sanctuaries. Other prisons, scattered across the world. If they all break. He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. The weight of what he's saying hangs in the air, heavier than the ash that buried Pompeii. Julia feels a cold dread settle in her stomach. They came here for answers. But all they found was a bigger, more impossible question. Marcus, who has been standing guard, finally turns to them. His face is grim, streaked with soot and dried sweat. "So what do we do? We can't fight a giant. We can't stop a mountain." He gestures with his sword towards the door. "That thing in there, we don't even know what it is." Alexandros rolls the scroll carefully. "We don't fight it. We find the other sanctuaries. We find a way to reforge the chains before it's too late." It sounds impossible. A hopeless quest against an enemy they can't even see. But as Julia looks at the scroll, at the map marked with other locations, a spark of defiance ignites within her. She lost her mother. She lost her city. She lost everything. But she's still alive. And while she's alive, she can fight. "Then we go," she says, her voice firm. "We find the next one. And we stop this, before it spreads." But their resolve is tested in an instant. The pounding behind the door stops. The silence that follows is absolute, more terrifying than the noise. Then, a low, grinding sound. Stone against stone. Marcus raises his sword. Julia holds her breath. The massive door begins to move, not swinging open, but sliding sideways with a deafening groan, revealing a sliver of absolute darkness within. And from that darkness comes a sound that makes Julia's blood run cold. Not a growl. Not a roar. A whisper. 1,000 voices, speaking in unison, in a language that has not been spoken on earth for millennia. They are not alone in the sanctuary. And they are about to find out exactly what was sealed inside. What secrets lie beyond that door? What ancient evil is now free? The fight for everything you know is just beginning. Subscribe and hit the bell, because the next chapter will reveal what emerges from the dark, and it will change the fate of the ancient world forever. The grinding of stone is deafening, a sound that feels like the world itself is cracking open. The massive door slides aside, revealing a darkness so complete it seems to swallow the torchlight. And from that void, the whisper grows into a chorus, 1,000 voices tangled together in a language older than Rome itself. Marcus tightens his grip on his sword, his knuckles white. Julia feels her heart hammer against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the ancient chant. Then, a shape emerges. It's not a creature of flesh and blood. It's a shifting mass of ash and shadow, vaguely humanoid, with eyes like glowing embers buried deep within its form. It takes a step forward, and the ground beneath their feet trembles. Alexandros shouts a warning, but the words are lost as the thing lunges. The fight for survival has just begun. Marcus is a whirlwind of steel, his sword hacking at the creature's shifting form. But each blow passes through it like smoke, doing no harm. The thing lashes out with a tendril of black ash, and Marcus barely dodges, the air where he stood a moment before now filled with a cloud of deadly dust. It moves with an unnatural speed, not charging, but flowing across the ground like a tide of darkness. Julia grabs a fallen torch and thrusts it forward. The fire seems to make the creature recoil, hissing and pulling back. Fire. It's afraid of the light. Use fire, she screams. The others grab torches and anything that burns, forming a desperate ring of flame against the advancing horror. But the creature is not alone. From the open doorway, more shadows begin to pour forth, smaller, twisted forms that scuttle along the walls. The smaller shadows are quicker, darting past the flames to snap at their heels. One of them latches onto Marcus's leg, and he feels a cold, numbing pain shoot through him. He stumbles, and the main creature surges forward, sensing weakness. Alexandros, who has been frantically studying the carvings on the wall, suddenly shouts, "The name." Its name is inscribed here. He points to a series of symbols that seem to writhe in the torchlight. It is a guardian, a warden of this place, corrupted by the eruption. We must speak its true name to bind it. He begins to chant, the strange, ancient syllables echoing through the chamber. The creature freezes, its form flickering as if caught in a violent struggle. It's working, but it's not enough. The creature is fighting the compulsion, and Alexandros's voice is growing weaker with each word. Alexandros's voice cracks, and the creature roars in triumph, shaking off the binding spell. It lunges at the scholar, but Julia throws herself in front of him, her torch raised like a spear. The creature hisses, but doesn't stop. In that instant, Marcus, ignoring the searing pain in his leg, drives his sword into the ground and uses it as a lever to pull himself up. He sees a large, cracked brazier filled with oil nearby. With a desperate heave, he kicks it over, sending the burning oil spreading across the floor in a river of fire. The flames race towards the creature, cutting it off from them and forcing it back. The smaller shadows shriek and retreat. The main creature is caught in the blaze, howling in agony. It thrashes, trying to escape, but the fire is too much. It begins to collapse in on itself, a whirlwind of burning ash and fading screams. The creature collapses into a heap of smoldering ash, its final scream echoing in the sudden silence. The smaller shadows dissolve into nothing. The chamber is quiet except for the crackle of dying flames and the ragged breaths of the survivors. Marcus leans heavily on his sword, his face pale. Julia rushes to his side, tearing a strip of cloth from her tunic to bind his wound. Alexandros walks slowly to the open doorway, peering into the darkness beyond. This was not the source, he says, his voice hollow. This was only a guardian. A watchdog. He turns back to them, his eyes wide with a terrible realization. The chains we seek to reforge are not here. This was a trap for anyone who came looking for them. He holds up the scroll, pointing to the map. Look. There are 3 other sanctuaries. We have to find the real one, before its guardian awakens fully. We have to find the heart of this evil. They leave the sanctuary, stepping out into the cold, ash-filled air. The sun is a dim, orange disk through the haze. They are battered, wounded, and exhausted, but they are alive. They have faced a nightmare and survived. But Alexandros's words hang over them like a shroud. This was only a trap. The real threat, the true source of the awakening, is elsewhere. They have a map, a purpose, and each other. Marcus, leaning on Julia for support, looks back at the dark doorway of the sanctuary. We were almost the last thing to come out of there, he says, his voice grim. Julia nods. She thinks of her mother, of her city, of everything she has lost. She thinks of the whisper from the doorway, a sound she will never forget. This is only the beginning, she says quietly. And the next door is already open. What other horrors await them in the forgotten corners of the empire? What ancient power is pulling the strings? The fight to save the ancient world is far from over. Subscribe and hit the bell, because the next journey will take them to a place where the dead do not rest, and the true master of the shadows will make its first move. The ash crunches under their boots like the bones of a dead world. They walk in silence, the map in Alexandros's hand their only guide. The air is thick, heavy with the smell of sulfur and something else, something old and wrong. Marcus's wound throbs with every step, but he refuses to stop. They are heading to a place the map calls the Forest of Whispers, a sacred grove that existed long before Rome. But as they crest a hill, they see it. The grove is not empty. A column of black smoke rises from its center. And a sound, faint at first, grows louder. It is not the wind. It is a chant. Hundreds of voices, rising and falling in a rhythm that feels older than time. Alexandros freezes. This is not a trap we walked into, he whispers. This is a summoning. And they are already here. They descend into the forest, and the world changes. The trees are blackened, twisted into shapes that look like screaming faces. The ground is covered in a gray, silvery moss that seems to pulse with a faint light. The chanting grows louder, more desperate. Through the trees, they see them. A circle of figures in dark, hooded robes, standing around a massive stone altar. On the altar, a woman is bound, struggling. But she is not the victim. She is a priestess, and she is speaking the words of the ritual. This is wrong, Julia says. This is not a summoning. This is a sacrifice. And she is not the victim, she is the conductor. Alexandros's face pales. They are not summoning a guardian, he says. They are summoning the source itself. They are calling the heart of the shadow from its slumber. Marcus draws his sword, ready to charge, but Alexandros grabs his arm. Wait. Look at the ground. The moss is moving. They look down. The silvery moss is flowing, like water, toward the center of the circle. It is not moss. It is something alive. They are feeding it, Alexandros whispers. They are giving it energy, life, power. We cannot stop them by force. We would be consumed. Julia's eyes narrow. She sees the priestess on the altar, and something about her seems familiar. The way she holds her head. The way her voice cuts through the air. I know her, Julia says, her voice trembling. She was in the temple. In Pompeii. She was the one who told me to run. She was the one who knew the way out. The priestess turns, and her eyes meet Julia's. And then, a voice, not from the priestess, but from the ground, speaks into their minds. You are too late. The ground erupts. The moss that was flowing now explodes upward, forming a wall of living shadow between the group and the ritual. The chanting stops. The silence is deafening. The priestess on the altar is gone. In her place stands a figure made of darkness, with eyes like burning coals. It is not the guardian they faced before. This is something far older, far more powerful. The heart has awakened, Alexandros says, his voice barely a whisper. The trap was to bring us here. To be the final offering. Marcus charges, his sword swinging. But the shadow moves like smoke, and his blade passes through it. It reaches out a hand of darkness, and Marcus is thrown back, crashing into a tree. Julia rushes to him. Alexandros is frozen, staring at the creature. We cannot fight this, he says. We can only run. They run. The forest is a nightmare of grasping branches and shifting ground. The creature is behind them, its roar shaking the very air. They burst through the tree line, back into the ash-covered world. But the creature does not follow. It stops at the edge of the forest, its burning eyes watching them. It cannot leave the grove. It is bound to it. We have to warn the others, Julia says, panting. The other sanctuaries. They are all in danger. Alexandros shakes his head. It's too late. The heart has awakened. The other sanctuaries are not the target. They were never the target. This was all a distraction. A way to make us look the wrong way while they woke the true power. He looks at the map, then tears it in half. We are not hunters. We are the hunted. And it knows our names now. They are broken, battered, and without a clear path. The map is in pieces. The creature is awake. And they are alone in a wasteland. But Julia looks at Marcus, and she sees the same fire in his eyes that she feels in her own heart. They have lost everything. Their homes. Their families. Their world. But they have not lost each other. And they have not lost hope. We go to Pompeii, she says. Pliny the Elder's fleet. There are still ships there. We find a way to warn Rome. To warn the empire. Alexandros looks at her, a flicker of something like admiration in his eyes. The empire will not believe you, he says. They will think you are mad. Julia smiles, a grim, determined smile. Then we will make them believe. They turn and walk towards the distant coast. The shadow in the forest watches them go. It has learned their names. And it will follow. But for now, they are alive. And they are fighting. The true battle for the ancient world has just begun. The ash is still falling, a gray, silent snow that coats everything in a shroud of death. They push forward, their lungs burning, their eyes stinging. Pompeii. It's a name that once meant safety, a port town that could be their salvation. But as they crest the final hill, the truth hits them like a physical blow. The harbor is a graveyard. Masts of ships jut out of the water like broken fingers, their hulls shattered against the rocks. The fires that once marked the town are now smoldering pits. There is no fleet. There is no escape. Julia's hand finds Marcus's, her grip tight and desperate. What now? She whispers, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. Alexandros doesn't answer. He just stares at the destruction, his face pale, his eyes fixed on something in the distance. He points, his finger trembling. There, he says. The temple. The old one, on the cliff. It's still standing. They make their way to the temple, a structure older than the town itself, built by the Greeks centuries before the Romans ever set foot here. The columns are cracked, the paint faded, but it has survived the eruption, a silent witness to the end of the world. Inside, they find others. A handful of survivors, huddled in the shadows, their eyes wide with fear. An old woman, her face etched with grief, clutches a broken amphora. A child, no older than 10, cries silently. They are the forgotten, the ones who were left behind. As they enter, a man steps forward. He is a Roman soldier, his armor dented and covered in ash. He looks at them with a mixture of relief and despair. "You came from Pompeii?" he asks. "Is it true? Is the city gone?" Marcus nods, unable to speak. The soldier's face falls. "Then it's all true. The prophecy. The old gods. They have returned to claim what is theirs." He looks at Alexandros, his eyes narrowing. "You know what I'm talking about, don't you, scholar? You've read the old texts. You know what's coming." Alexandros's face hardens. He doesn't deny it. "The texts were hidden," he says, his voice low. "They were sealed away because they spoke of a power that could end the world. A power that was not meant to be awakened." The soldier shakes his head. "It's too late for secrecy. The mountain has erupted. The ground has split. And now, the heart of the earth is beating again." He leads them to a crack in the temple's floor, where a faint, pulsing glow emanates from deep below. "We felt it last night," he says. "A tremor, unlike any other. Not from the mountain. From below. Something is moving down there. Something massive." Julia kneels, peering into the glow. She feels a warmth, not from the fire, but from something else. Something alive. "What is it?" she asks. The soldier's voice is barely a whisper. "They call it the eye of the underworld. It's the gateway to the realm of the dead. And it's opening." The ground trembles, a violent shake that sends dust raining from the ceiling. The soldier stumbles back, his eyes wide with terror. "It's coming," he screams. The eye is opening. A deafening roar fills the temple, a sound that is not from a beast, but from the earth itself. The crack in the floor widens, the glow intensifying. A wave of heat washes over them, so intense that it feels like their skin is melting. The survivors scream, scrambling towards the exit. But the soldier stands his ground, drawing his sword. "Go," he shouts at them. "Get out of here. I'll hold it off. I'll give you time." Marcus grabs Julia's arm, pulling her towards the door. "We have to go," he yells. But Alexandros is frozen, staring into the abyss. He mutters something, a name, an ancient word. Typhon. The storm giant. The one who was buried beneath the mountain. He turns, his face pale. It's not the volcano that destroyed Pompeii. It was the beast that was trapped inside it. And now, it's free. They run, blindly, desperately. The temple collapses behind them, a thunderous crash that shakes the very ground. The soldier's scream is cut short, swallowed by the roaring chaos. They don't look back. They can't. They burst out into the ash-filled air, the world a swirling gray nightmare. The ground is cracking, fissures opening up, swallowing everything. They run towards the coast, towards the sea, but the sea is boiling, steam rising from its surface. There is no escape. They are trapped on a dying island. Julia stumbles, falls. Marcus catches her, lifts her up. Alexandros is behind them, his face a mask of despair. "We can't outrun it," he says. "It's everywhere. It's in the ground, the air, the water. We are in its domain now." He looks around, his eyes searching. Then he points to a distant hill. There. The old settlement. It was built on a spot the Greeks considered sacred. There might be a passage. A way below. A way out. They reach the settlement, a collection of crumbling stone huts, abandoned for centuries. The ground here is more stable, the ash less thick. There is a strange peace, an eerie silence that feels almost unnatural. Alexandros leads them to a small, unassuming structure at the center of the village. An altar, worn smooth by time. He brushes away the ash, revealing a carved symbol. A spiral. The Greeks believed this was a doorway to the underworld, he says. A place where the veil between worlds was thin. He presses a stone, and a section of the ground slides away, revealing a dark staircase descending into the earth. A cold, damp air rises from the depths. "This is our only chance," he says. It leads to a network of caves that run beneath the mountain. "If we can make it through, we might reach the other side. We might survive." Julia looks at Marcus. He nods. They have no other choice. They descend into the darkness, the sound of the dying world fading above them. And below, in the silence, they hear it. A slow, rhythmic breathing. Something is waiting for them. Something that has been waiting for a very, very long time. The stone stairway spirals down into a darkness so absolute it feels solid, pressing in on them from all sides. Each step echoes, a sharp crack in the suffocating silence. Alexandros holds a torch, its flame casting long, dancing shadows that writhe like living things on the rough-hewn walls. Julia counts her breaths to stay calm, but the air grows thicker, heavier, carrying a strange mineral smell. After what feels like an eternity, they reach the bottom. The cave opens into a vast chamber, and the torchlight reveals a sight that stops them cold. A subterranean lake, its surface black as obsidian, stretches out before them. And on the far shore, barely visible, a structure of massive, perfectly cut stones, older than anything Rome has ever built. "This is not a cave," Alexandros whispers, his voice full of awe. "This is a sanctuary. A place where the old gods were worshipped long before Jupiter or Mars. We are walking into a tomb that has been waiting for us." The lake is still. Too still. No ripples, no movement, no sign of life. It's like a mirror to the underworld, reflecting not their faces, but the oppressive silence above. Alexandros kneels at the water's edge, his fingers hovering just above the surface. "This is the water of the Styx," he says, his voice barely a whisper. "The boundary between our world and the next." The Greeks believed that to cross it was to abandon all hope of return. Julia looks at Marcus, her fear mirrored in his eyes. They have no boat, no way to cross. But then, Marcus spots it. A narrow stone causeway, just below the water's surface, leading directly to the structure on the far shore. It's an invitation, or a trap. They have no choice but to accept. They step onto the submerged path, the cold water soaking their boots. As they move forward, the torchlight reveals the structure more clearly. It's a gate, a massive stone doorway carved with symbols that seem to writhe in the flickering light. And from behind it, they can hear it. A slow, rhythmic breathing, like a sleeping giant. They stand before the gate, its surface covered in a language older than any they know. Alexandros runs his fingers over the carvings, his lips moving silently as he tries to decipher their meaning. "It's a warning," he says finally. "And a promise. This is a prison, but also a doorway. It was built to hold something, but also to release it, when the time is right. Julia looks at the symbols, and a cold dread creeps up her spine. One of them, a spiral, is the same symbol she saw in her nightmares as a child. The same symbol she carved into the wall of her bakery without knowing why. "What's inside?" she asks, her voice trembling. Alexandros looks at her, his eyes filled with an ancient fear. "Not what," he says. "Who?" "The one who was here before the gods. The one who will be here after they are gone. The thing that has been sleeping beneath this mountain for millennia. And we are the ones who have come to wake it." He places his hand on the center of the gate, and the stone begins to groan. The gate doesn't swing open. It slides, splitting down the middle and receding into the rock with a sound like grinding bones. A wave of cold, putrid air washes over them, and the torch flames flicker, nearly dying. From the darkness beyond, a voice emerges. It's not loud, but it resonates deep within their bones, low, resonant hum that seems to bypass their ears and speak directly to their souls. "You have come at last." Julia and Marcus draw their weapons, but Alexandros holds up a hand. "Wait," he says. "Listen." The voice continues, a whisper that seems to come from everywhere at once. "I have waited through the rise and fall of empires. Through the birth and death of gods. And now, you bring me the key. The one who carries the sign." The voice is silent for a moment, and then Julia feels it. A cold, invisible finger tracing the spiral scar on her wrist. She looks down, and the scar is glowing with a faint, sickly light. "You," the voice says. "You are the one." The creature begins to take shape in the darkness. It's not a physical form, but a shifting mass of shadow and ash, coalescing into a vaguely humanoid shape. It has no face, but it has eyes, 2 points of glowing ember that burn into Julia's soul. "You carry my mark since birth," it says. "You are the child of my prophecy. You will open the final door, and I will walk the earth again." Alexandros steps forward, his voice shaking. "No. The prophecy is a lie. The mark is a curse, a warning to keep you sealed. She is not your key, she is your warden." The creature turns its fiery eyes on him, and the air grows even colder. "Fool! You know nothing of what you speak. The warden is the key. To lock the door, one must be able to unlock it. And you have brought her to me. For that, I will grant you a quick death." The shadow lunges, and Marcus throws himself in its path, his sword swinging. The blade passes through the shadow without effect, and Marcus is hurled against the wall with a sickening crack. He crumples to the ground, clutching his ribs. "Marcus!" Julia screams. Julia stands between the creature and Alexandros, her hand raised, the spiral scar burning like a brand. "Stop!" she shouts, her voice echoing through the cavern. The creature halts, its fiery eyes fixed on her. "You feel it, don't you?" it says. "The power within you. The connection. You are not like them. You are mine." Julia's mind races. She has no weapon, no power, only a scar and a lifetime of nightmares. But she remembers something Alexandros said, a throwaway line that now feels like a lifeline. The warden is the key. To lock the door, one must be able to unlock it. She looks at the creature, and a strange calm settles over her. "You're right," she says, her voice steady. "I am the key. But you forgot one thing." She steps forward, her hand outstretched. "I can also lock the door. Forever." She slams her palm onto the wall next to the gateway, and the spiral scar flares with blinding light. The creature screams, a sound of pure rage and agony, as the shadow is pulled back into the darkness, the gate sliding shut with a deafening crash. The cavern falls silent. Julia collapses, exhausted. Alexandros rushes to her, but she is alive. Marcus drags himself up, his face pale with pain. They have survived, but the mountain is still rumbling above them. The door is closed, but they are still trapped below. And somewhere in the darkness, they hear it again. The slow, rhythmic breathing. It's not coming from behind the gate anymore. It's coming from behind them. The cavern falls silent. The only sound is the ragged breath of 3 survivors and the distant, angry rumble of the mountain above. Julia is on her knees, the spiral scar on her hand still glowing with a faint, dying light. Alexandros is at her side, his scholar's hands trembling as he checks her pulse. Marcus leans against the wall, his face pale, one hand pressed hard against his ribs. They are alive. But the air is thick with something worse than ash. The gate is sealed, but the silence feels wrong, like the quiet before a second collapse. The creature's final scream still echoes in their bones. Then, from the darkness behind them, comes a sound that freezes the blood in their veins. A slow, rhythmic breathing. It is not coming from behind the gate. It is coming from the tunnel they just left. Marcus's eyes meet Julia's. The mountain above them is still rumbling. The door is closed. But something else has been listening to them the whole time. And it is hungry. We have to move, Marcus says, his voice tight with pain. Now. Alexandros helps Julia to her feet. Her eyes are still fixed on the gate, on the spirals that now look like a wound that has healed. She touches her scar. The warden is the key. The words feel like a heavy chain around her neck. What did it mean, she whispers. That I carry its mark since birth. Alexandros's face is grim. It meant the prophecy was never about you freeing it. It was about you being strong enough to cage it again. The mark is not a curse. It's a seal. Marcus grunts, pushing himself off the wall. Then let's hope the seal holds. Because if it doesn't, we won't survive a second time. They start moving, their footsteps echoing in the vast darkness. The breathing sound has stopped, but the feeling of being watched has not. It's as if the very walls have eyes. They are not alone in this mountain. And they are running out of time. They find the tunnel that leads back to the surface, but the path is blocked by a fresh collapse of rock and debris. This wasn't here before. Alexandros exclaims, his voice echoing. He looks at the pile of rubble more closely. The rocks are not just broken stone. They are fused together, as if melted by an impossible heat. The creature, it's been moving while we were down here. Marcus tests a large boulder, but it doesn't budge. It's sealing us in. Julia's hand goes to the wall, tracing the ancient carvings that cover this section of the tunnel. They are different from the ones on the gate. They show a city, a wave of fire, and a single figure standing against it. This isn't a tomb, she says, her voice hollow. It's a cage. And we're the ones who were meant to be trapped in it. A low tremor shakes the ground. Dust rains from the ceiling. The mountain is still awake, and it is not happy about what they did to its guardian. Alexandros studies the map, his finger tracing the lines. There's another way out. An old aqueduct that runs parallel to this tunnel. It should surface near the coast, close to Herculaneum. He looks up, his eyes filled with a new kind of fear. But it passes directly beneath the temple where we found the first gate. Marcus shakes his head. We can't go back there. We barely made it out alive. We don't have a choice, Alexandros insists. This way is sealed. That path is our only way out of this mountain before it buries us in it. Julia looks at the two men, then at the map. Her finger traces the path, and it stops at a small symbol she hasn't noticed before. A second spiral. "What's this?" she asks. Alexandros leans in, and his face goes pale. "A second gate. I thought it was a legend, a myth. But it's real." He looks at Julia, a terrible weight in his eyes. "There's another one. And if we're not careful, we're going to walk right into its shadow." They crawl through the narrow aqueduct, the water cold and black around their knees. The only light is from Alexandros's dying torch. Marcus is struggling, his breath coming in short, painful gasps. But he doesn't stop. He can't. The walls around them begin to change. The rough stone gives way to smooth, carved blocks. Blocks that look exactly like the ones they saw in the sanctuary. "We're here," Alexandros whispers. They emerge into a larger chamber. And in the center of it, bathed in an eerie, greenish glow that seems to come from the moss on the walls, is a door. It's smaller than the first one, but the carvings on it are unmistakable. The spiral. Julia's scar begins to burn. Not with pain, but with recognition. "It knows I'm here," she says. Alexandros looks at her, his face a mask of terror and awe. "It's been waiting for you," he says. "The creature we sealed wasn't the only one. This is the door to the other. The one that was meant to be opened." Julia steps forward, her hand raised. The spiral on her palm flares, casting a blinding light that makes the others shield their eyes. The carvings on the door begin to writhe, like snakes waking from a long sleep. "No!" Alexandros shouts. "Don't touch it. We don't know what it will do." But it's too late. The moment her hand is within an inch of the stone, the door dissolves into a cloud of black dust. Beyond it is not a chamber, but a void. A darkness so complete it seems to swallow the torchlight. And from that void, a voice speaks. It is not the voice of the creature they sealed. It is older. Colder. And it knows Julia's name. "You are the child of my prophecy," it says. "You have opened the final door." Julia's face is a mask of horror. She wasn't sealing it. She was unlocking it. The warden is the key. And she has just turned it. The ground shakes violently. The ceiling cracks. And from the darkness, a pair of huge, burning eyes opens. This is the end of Pompeii. But it is the beginning of something far worse. And the only question left is, who will live to tell the story of what was truly unleashed here? The answer may lie in the ruins of Herculaneum, where another soldier is about to face his own test of faith. That is the story we will tell next. Subscribe now to the channel, and hit the bell, so you don't miss the descent into the second city of the dead.